Hello and welcome to Web of Light. I'm Dr. Kevin, and today we'll take you on that journey of weaving a web of light with people that are making a difference in the world. Today, our co-host for the month is Lori Otto. Hey, Lori.
Hey, Dr. Kevin.
If you have not seen the show that Lori and I did, I kept on saying last year, but I'm wondering if it actually fell in the year before. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 2 years ago this summer.
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. Isn't that
I think
weird?
so, yeah.
Time just flies for me right now.
If you go to the YouTube channel, where once the show has been on air, we house all of the shows so that you can go into our archives. Thank you, YouTube. You should check the show out that Lori and I did. We are making her responsible for Wonder Woman, the Me Too movement, the Amazon Warriors and Black Panther.
Yeah.
What else out there? Because before all of that happened, she was here talking about women's empowerment and women going out and making a difference in the world, making a change in the world.
See, look what happened. She put that out in the universe, and
yeah,
it starts to happen.
I know. Then we're up to our eyeballs in estrogen.
Well, you know, not for nothing, but the way it's been going hasn't been working, so it's time to make a change.
You know what? You're not going to get an argument from me. I already said on one of our earlier shows together that I think if we had more females in positions of power, I think the world would be at a better place right now. So I'm all about it. So speaking of which, I do want to. This is my first Web of Light show since the honeymoon.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if it's going to be released in that order because the release dates kind of go there. But as you can tell, I'm in full
Yes, look at that. I
sweetheart,
love the color.
douchey carousel. I have my bright Caribbeans on.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like it.
Gotta have a little color in the world.
Yes, no, nothing wrong with that.
We went to Curacao for our honeymoon without realizing that the week we were there was Carnival Week.
I read that. Yeah, how exciting, though. What a beautiful surprise, a bonus.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't seem to think so.
The resort we stayed at, we could literally, it was a 5-minute walk to the parade route.
Nice, see?
We got to walk over the pontoon bridge. They have have you heard of the Heart Project? There's this thing called the Heart Project, and they have these huge hearts, and they're all like done in metal work, and you can put a lock on it, and it's to, it's about, the world having a heart, or, type of thing.
Nice, I love it.
And so Jeff and I took a lock. We put the day that we put the lock on, we put our wedding day, we put his name on one side of the lock, my side on the other, and we locked it on the thing.
Very cool. So you're there forever.
So we're there forever. And I don't know, I have to say this has never happened to me before. When we left the resort, we had hotel staff giving us goodbye gifts, telling us they would miss us, the staff.
Aww. Well, you guys are pretty awesome, so I'm not surprised, but that's still incredibly sweet.
The loveliest people there made so many great connections. And I think one of the things is, because there were a couple people at the very beginning of the week that were kind of a little like standoffish, but I think that's more like they're supposed to try to be like a little invisible, and a lot of people are on vacation and they don't really connect. And like when I ask somebody like, well, how are you? So what do you do? If I found out somebody had kids, I'd be like, well, where are the pictures? You got to have pictures on you.
Right.
And I think at some point they realized I was a legitimate nut.
Well, legitimate.
Just
not. It's good.
So, so we made some wonderful connections. I picked up like a dozen new friends on Facebook.
Awesome.
They're keeping in touch. I get messages from them. They want to know when we're coming back. And this is not like the hotel wanting our money. This is like staff.
Right, the staff wanting to see you again. That's spectacular.
And I got an invitation to UB, who's an international artist, to go. I got a private showing of his gallery, actually taped an interview, which is going to be on Dragons, Unicorns, and Other Creative Creatures. He is an international award-winning artist, and his tagline is, "Your trash is my cash."
Nice.
He's in his 70s, and when he first started working as an artist, he couldn't afford supplies. or a lot of them.
Right.
So he started making sculptures out of car bumpers and tires and
I
stuff like
love
this.
it.
And now he has a traffic circle named after him that's got two huge, like 20-foot statue, like things. One's an iguana and one's just an arch.
Nice.
All that he made out of stuff that was being thrown away.
See, and that just shows you what you can do out of these things that most of us toss. He made beautiful art out of it. That is so exciting.
Yep. I can't wait. I have like an 18-minute interview and some pictures and then some other art and artist and color is all over the place there. I mean, it's just, and we would go out at 10 o'clock at night, walk across the pontoon bridge. It would be all lighted and colored and just go around and, there's art on the walls. You can't go into the alleys or any place that there's not some bright, beautiful.
That must be spectacular.
It was.
Oh, I'm glad you guys had such a great time.
We did, and we can't wait to go back. But I'm going to share today's quote and our kind of a little bit of our inspirational story, and then introduce our guest for the day, who's going to be at the Web of Light Expo, as you are.
Yes, I am. I will be there doing readings. So book now.
Yeah, you're going to be there. You're going to be there doing readings. So the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes. I love that quote because I feel it's so true.
And the inspirational story that I wanted to share was there is this man who I think he's about in his 40s. When he was in his 20s, he had a little bit of a music career, traveled around, mostly guitar. I think it was country western music. I didn't get all the specifics. But he now is in a different place in his life, and he works at an animal shelter. And I actually found a video of him, and you can find it if you look online. But he, one day, at the recommendation of his boss, got his guitar out, and he started playing music to the animals in the shelter. And they stopped barking, and they became happier, and they became easier to deal with. And so now he is doing this additional service of something he loves to do, which is providing a better environment for these animals that are in the shelter. And I just thought that is so neat. And how many of us have a passion that even if we can't make a living from it or can't make a living from it anymore or whatever, or somehow we could integrate an aspect of ourselves and bring joy into the world while doing joyful things.
I think that's spectacular. I saw that video. I mean, I didn't watch it, but I saw that it was there. Someone had posted it. And I just think, how amazing is that? Because I know how my animal responds to music. She loves it. When Bruce picks up his guitar and plays, or I break out my Native American flute, she's in heaven. So I can imagine these scared, lonely animals must just get so much comfort and joy. I think that's amazing.
Yep.
More of us need to be like that.
And he's doing something that's his passion.
Right. He's making himself happy as well. That's beautiful.
I think that so often we lose sight that we have these gifts and we're giving these gifts to give to the world.
Right.
And when we can take our passion and be making a living off of it, that's even better. I think everybody should be making a living off things that bring them joy.
Yes.
I mean, people say to me, what do you do for work? It's like, I don't do work, I do joy. I've been doing joy for 28 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, do I have moments where I'm doing stuff I don't like in my business? Absolutely. I mean, everybody does. But for the overall part, I do what I love. I do what I'm naturally gifted and talented at. I do something that I'm passionate about, and I get paid for it.
Yeah.
So that I can get by in the world. It just doesn't get any better than that.
Sometimes it still amazes me. People pay
What the
me.
people? Yeah.
Pay me to do this. I mean, I love what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty spectacular.
So if you're working in a job right now, and maybe that job isn't exactly what you want to be doing or where you want to be going, think about what do you have? What's that little unique? How can you be that guitar player in the animal shelter? Or how can you be that cop that's dancing in New York City as
Right?
he's doing traffic and doing all of
Right?
this? Or
Having
how
a
can you-
great time.
Yeah. I mean, I have been yelled at a few times, so I have to tell you, I've been yelled at a few times about being too happy. Like, I'll be somewhere and I'll just be like really happy. What are you so happy about? I'm offsetting you being grouchy. What are you so grouchy about?
And that's what I say. Why are you so unhappy? You know?
So, today's guest is Carol Cleary. Carol was introduced to the benefits of energy work about 12 years ago when her daughter had a fall and a knee injury. For 8 weeks, she was in pain. I think she means the daughter, though probably the mother was in pain too.
When your kid's in pain, you're in pain.
Yeah, when your kid's in pain, you're in, and sometimes your kid's just a pain, but that's all right. For 8 weeks, she was in pain, and through traditional medicine, was seen by an orthopedics, which went all the way to an MRI with no explanation for her pain, as there was no apparent injury. After the MRI, a friend suggested she seek an energy healer who explained the pain as related to grief that was displaced by the fall. She removed the grief piece, and her daughter went from a level pain of 8 to a level pain of 3. And the next day, she was finally pain-free. From that point forward, when issues came up, they turned to energy work. Carol would often get bronchitis that would not respond to traditional treatments, but did respond to energy work. She has used many different energy modalities over the years and felt she was meant to help people by healing emotional blockages. There are people with emotional blockages. What's their problem?
Yeah, I don't know.
Be happy. Just be happy. Carol was introduced to emotion code and body code. I'm so determined to call it emotional code. But it's emotion code. We got the Al out. Emotion code and body code developed by Dr. Brad Nelson through a friend. She participated in sessions for her friend's certification. The session she worked is done on herself, release pain for others. Carol is going to be at the Web of Light Expo. She is going to be speaking on body code and emotion code. Carol, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. So, what kind of history, did you have any history with alternatives at all before your daughter dragged you through the mess of the woo-woo community with her knee? We always blame the child. And then the child always blames the mother. So it always balances out. Go ahead.
Not to the extent that, no, that was really my introduction to working with energy and on a pretty regular basis. There would be times when she would deal with nausea, and there's just a little thin sheath that goes through around all of our organs and through our body. And she would tighten it, get stretched out, and it just became a way of helping the body heal. As you mentioned, my bronchitis, I would go on antibiotics on and off, and after I would try healing it with the herbs for 3 weeks and it wouldn't work, I'd finally think to call Kim, and I'd say, I don't know why it took me this long to come in. And she would work on some type of a grief piece or some type of an energy piece that was laboring my lungs, and would resolve it. And so as a result of that, we both ended up just going in for energy work. And that work was called integrative awareness. And then there are times that I've worked with acupuncture, and there are times I've worked with other intuitive healers. And I just think that in traditional medicine, we look at our physical body and we think about our spiritual body, but we don't always think about our energetic body. And that's what energy work works with. And that energetic body, when it gets off, can affect our physical body or our emotional state. So that really was my introduction to the benefit in a huge way. I don't think I did any energy work before that.
Okay. We always like to talk to the people. There are people that watch this show that are on various levels of their own journey. And so we always like to have people share their journey to kind of, because somebody out there is identifying with some piece of your journey.
Yeah.
As we're talking about it. So you ran across the thing body code. Now, have you heard of body code and emotion code before?
I had not, so I'm very fascinated because
Okay.
I do teach all my students that illness, injury, any of that all starts in your energy. And it's when you don't address it that it goes to your physical. So yeah, I'm very excited to hear about this, learn about this. How about you, Dr. Kevin? Are you knowledgeable in these areas?
Well, I'm not knowledgeable in this particular area. I mean, we had a conversation. I met you at the Wolf Healing Center and talked about a few different things. And at that point is when we got you on the show, and and you decided to get involved with the expo. As somebody that's worked as a medical intuitive and an energy worker for years, I'm familiar and, for lack of a better term, preach, teach. The concept that the body is just the physical repository for emotional, mental, and spiritual imbalances, and and it's so funny because do you do any work with the auras when you do this work or not? Is there an auric component to it or not?
Not an aura component, but there is when I work with body code or even in emotion code, we'll identify stuff in the chakras.
Yeah, it's so interesting because one of the things is but I do the Wei Chi system of chakras, which is like pretty different than a lot of the stuff that's out there. I have to at some point get it more formalized so I can get it out there more. But a lot of people don't realize that auras were originally diagnostic tools to just tell you what was off. But sometimes people try to like heal you through your aura, and it's like no, your aura. It's like trying to heal your symptom instead of your cause. And so when you kind of look at that and bring that energy in, yeah, you can kind of quote unquote patch an aura a little bit, but you're really not going to do anything until you realize what created the hole in it. Like what was the emotional, mental, spiritual issue that created it in it, versus the chakra. Auras, unfortunately, have just kind of sort of become almost like sideshow because of aura photography. Oh, look at all the pretty colors!
Well, which is one reason why I started teaching about auras, so people understand. There are some true aura photographers out there, and there are some phony aura photographers out there, and you have to take that picture with a grain of salt.
Yeah, a little pepper, maybe some garlic. I like it tossed with some gluten-free pasta. So tell us, emotional code and body code are they siblings, two separate? I'm assuming they're like somehow related.
Well, Dr. Nelson is a chiropractor from Utah who created them. And so emotion code works with identifying trapped emotions in the body, and they can be anywhere in the body. They can be in an organ, they can be in a system, they can be in the chakra. Body code goes a little more in-depth and actually works on energies that create imbalances in the body, which lead to the disease state. So sometimes when I work with body code, as I'm identifying those energies, then I end up working in emotion code and then further identifying trapped emotions that created some of those other energies being trapped and created the imbalance. So they're two separate systems, whereas emotion code just identifies and works with trapped emotions, but just identifying trapped emotions can be huge in making a difference in how you feel. I was really off last week and I couldn't figure it out, and I asked a friend to take a look at it for me, because sometimes it's hard to do work on your own self.
Yep. Sometimes
it's better to have somebody else take that eye. And she said, you've just absorbed a whole bunch of energies from other people. And so then I was like, oh, okay, now I can work with that. And so I sat back and I identified energies that I had absorbed from different people that I'm with frequently. And I realized at that point that I'm probably a little bit more of an empath than I realized.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was amazing how after a couple of days of pulling off what I could on each of those 2 days, it was like, oh, I feel really light now. I feel really good. So that in the trapped emotion is actually the most frequently trapped energy in the body. That's what we tend to have a lot of. We can have as many as 1,000 trapped emotions in our body.
And that's on a good day. Well, But one of the things is for years, I try to get people to understand that you look at the languaging our society has come up with things. And one of the languaging pieces is they will talk about how somebody is being eaten alive with emotions, that they're carrying all this stuff. Now, where else do we also use the term being eaten alive? That's one of the terms. Anybody didn't bring the bills? What? Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
We I guess we assumed you were just going to
go into it. I was asking a question, but
sorry.
That's all right. But people will talk about being eaten up with cancer.
Yes.
Yeah. People always talk about, people that are being eaten up with cancer, people that are being eaten up with emotions. Any similarity to those two statements? I would say the answer is yes. And Western medicine really has only been catching up the last decade or less with the idea of how much damage shows up because of emotional imbalances.
Right.
And emotions are just simply energy in motion. If you have the energy and you don't put it in motion and vomit it out, it's going to get stuck and trapped.
You're better off sitting there and getting angry, sad, or whatever emotion you're feeling and letting it all out. Because when you stifle it, that's when you trap it.
Yep.
Because a trapped emotion is just an emotion that hasn't been processed, and it is an energy.
Yep.
But there are some people that I know that spew anger, like, it's just their thing. And to me, all they're doing is adding negative to the world, to everything. So I always think there's got to be a line to when you're really releasing your emotion and when you're just being
And I don't mean be angry towards somebody else, Lori, but if you're really angry, go in a room and figure out what you're angry about and get it off. And for somebody who's angry like that all the time, there's probably a lot of trapped energies and emotions that have been in them for a very long time
that they didn't release.
And so part of the emotion code is identifying the emotion. Part of the body code is you identify trapped emotions, but you also identify emotional resonance. So that means if you say you have had a lot of, well, you go with anger because you brought up anger. If you had a lot of anger as a child, maybe you weren't heard, maybe you were constantly told you were wrong, maybe your opinions were just never valued. And so that may have resonated as anger within, saying, I'm a person, but an adult not necessarily seeing that.
Right, right.
And so what happens...
She was peaking in my childhood. Shame on her. Go ahead.
If you're trapping all of that anger eventually, as opposed to it just being a trapped emotion and it stays in your body, then it becomes an emotional resonance where it's constantly vibrating. And so you might not even necessarily know why you're angry, just that you're angry.
Right.
And so that's what my work will do, is my work will identify some of those things. And you might, you identify piece by piece, but you identify it and you release it, and then that allows your body to go back to being back in balance versus being imbalanced from those trapped emotions.
So, but release it, but do it in a healthy way. Not,
absolutely.
Like if you go and punch somebody out because you were angry, that's not healthy. That's just causing more.
Absolutely, and I didn't mean it.
No, I know. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
We used to. I always used to use the analogy, or still do sometimes. Still do. I shouldn't say used to. Sounds like I'm retired. That ain't happening. But I always use the oil barrel analogy. And so when you have an oil barrel and it's 99% full all the time, you only need 1 cup for it to spill over. Mm-hmm. And if you just, and it just spills over enough, then you're still walking around with one that's 99%, so it only takes 1 more cup again. Mm-hmm. It only takes 1 more cup. It only takes 1 more cup. And one of the things that happens is And I love the idea that you have to identify these and take them apart.
Mhm.
And I think that that's very powerful because a lot of times, and I know I found this working with the ADD population I work with, and all that work is if if you're not being allowed or you don't know how to express any emotions and they're backed up, at some point it just becomes you don't even know what you're feeling. You get frustrated. Frustrated comes out as anger. So even if something, and you can see you see a small child do this sometimes. Even if it's something happy that happens, they still look like they got angry
Mhm.
because when you pour them all in, they all end up becoming like a cesspool.
Yeah.
So no matter what emotion you pour in, if they haven't learned how to deal with it appropriate, they haven't learned that it's okay, and there's way too little consideration given to young children and emotional health and preschools and schools and frustrated parents and single parenting and coming home and not having the time, and it's a lot of times from a very young age we're just taught that our emotions are inconvenient or they're just wrong, but depending on the environment it can be all emotions. But when you put all emotions in, the one that will come out more often than anything is anger. Because you're frustrated and you're angry, even if you're happy. Does that make sense when I say it that way?
Right, because you don't know how to express it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just that one last emotion that you had just tipped it over the edge. And sometimes it's what you felt previously that's really coming to the surface as well. So yeah, but no, I think we in general in society have been taught, not just as kids, but even as adults, to suppress what we're feeling. It's not appropriate at the moment, or we're just not comfortable with realizing that we have emotions and feeling them and processing them.
So let me ask this question. I think I asked it to you when I did your show, when you did the TV show with me. But so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much, when you're trying to express an honest emotion that might be perceived as negative, with 10 means I want an AK. You know what an AK is, right?
That's an
I
AK.
think most people do right now.
Yeah. It's a rapid fire gun.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
On a scale, do you want, when you try to express an honest emotion and some guy looks at you and says, "What is it, your time a month?"
You know, it used to be that would really make me angry because it's just so disrespectful.
Yes.
It is.
That's my point.
But now I'm like, dude, if you're going to say that to me, you're not worth my even wasting my time trying to tell you whatever it is I was trying to tell you.
I thought maybe it just made you hysterically laughing while you were pouring a little extra arsenic in their drink.
No. No, I have more fun ways to deal with stress.
To get even? Oh, okay. But in our society, women are considered emotional and hysterical, and probably having their time of month if they're having emotions. And guys, what are you? A faggot? I mean, you can't be masculine and express emotions. So and that's gotten a little better, but it's still way too common.
Oh, I've been known to say to a man, "What's the matter? Can't you handle my emotion? Are you that weak?" Oh, I've been known to say that to men. Not my husband.
love you,
'cause
Lori.
He's perfect, but I really, because I've gotten to the point where I'm not going to squash myself for somebody else. So I will call them on their BS. And to me, if someone has that kind of response to me being upset or whatever, I'm going to call them on it.
So now when you're doing the emotions, Carol, are you identifying, as part of this process, because there's all sorts of processes out there and we're still trying to understand how this process looks, and you're going to show this process on me in a minute.
Yep.
But do you try to identify where the emotion came from, or is it just finding it and releasing it?
It all depends. Okay, so we have two parts of our brain. We have our conscious and our subconscious. And our conscious brain is what we're actually thinking about. But our subconscious mind is the engine, so to speak, of all of the functions that we're going through, as well as our subconscious mind is like a computer hologram of our life. It holds on to all of the past events that aren't necessarily there in our conscious life, as well as I believe it holds on to things from our spirit from past lives. So it all depends on how high up in the subconscious it is. If it's right there at the tip of the subconscious, I don't usually have to identify very much, and we can just release it and let it go. But if it's not up at the top of the subconscious and it's at the bottom, or think of it as a glass, if it's at the bottom of the glass versus the top of the glass, sometimes you identify a little more information to be able to pull it out. So it all depends on where it is in your mind.
So what I'm hearing you say is there is an identifying of where the emotion came from that is part of the process.
It is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes, I don't know if you have this experience as well, but sometimes, you know, people will come to me and they'll go, you know, I you know, like, I'll pick something up and they'll be like, well, I went to so-and-so and they took that away from me. And I'm like, honey, if you didn't do the processing around it, if you didn't understand it, if you didn't learn the lesson that was attached to it, if you didn't make some shift within the reality of who you are, they can't take it from you. They can only, you know, like put a gag on it for a while. So I'm glad to see that there's some identification, because there tends to be this stream of people in the spiritual community that want to try to sell you a magic wand. Oh, you don't have to do anything. I'll just do it all. You don't have to take any ownership, no responsibility, no understanding. I'm going to erase your karma from all your last 100,000 lives and you'll be perfect. Well, first of all, it tells me that they don't know what karma is, so I wish they'd stop using the word.
Isn't that the truth?
But, I mean, did you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I 100% know what you're talking about. And I always tell people, okay, so you went to Sue over there and she removed this from you. What did you do next? Well, nothing. Okay. So what happened next time you were in a situation that triggered that? Well, I reacted the same way. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to do something. So you identify, go ahead.
So we'll identify. So emotion code isn't necessarily the answer for changing a behavior. You still have to change the behavior. Because if you're not changing the behavior, you just build up and store more things.
Exactly.
But what emotion code sometimes does is it pulls off stuff that prevents you from being able to move forward.
The Band-Aid so you can do the work.
So you can do the work, right. It helps to identify that. And one of the things the body does is it can build up a heart wall, and we'll see if you don't mind if you have one. Just because, as I talked about child, you said, oh, that describes my childhood. The subconscious mind is part of our spirit, but the seat of the subconscious, as Dr. Nelson describes it, is actually in your heart. That's where your spirit resides, your divine connection, however you want to describe it. Your inner being, your inner voice. And so your heart, we think of it as the vessel that pumps our blood and keeps us alive, but there's also that energetic emotional component of it being the seat of the subconscious, also being the seat of the soul or the spirit. You know, how we'll often hear the phrase, follow your heart. So if your heart is feeling like it's being broken, or the spirit part feels like it might get hurt, the body has a way of creating a heart wall. The subconscious mind knows that its job is to protect the heart. And so it'll build a heart wall around the heart, which is literally just all of the negative emotions that have been piled up in your body, and they'll build a wall. It can be of significance. Sometimes it's made of a hard material. Sometimes it's made of a favorite food. The subconscious thinks logically, so to have an invisible heart wall doesn't make any sense. So it's of a more of a physical structure. And when you have a heart wall, if that heart wall is made of all these negative, low vibrating emotions, it prevents you from sending love and receiving love, and it prevents you from being creative, and sometimes it prevents you from just moving forward in life. So it's kind of an important piece to address for people and to pull the heart wall down.
Now, what happens, because I've been told I don't have a heart, if you pull it down and there's nothing behind it?
Oh,
Am I in trouble?
Please.
Okay, so I'm going to come over there.
So in Emotion Code, Dr. Nelson created a chart.
Okay.
And I don't know how well this will be seen on the camera, but basically he took 30 emotions and he broke them up between 2 different columns and different rows. And I'm going to use this as a way to identify what some of the emotions are that we
Great.
need to pull off. And there's a lot more than 30 emotions, but our energy is smart enough to know that I might use one term, but another term fits in with that same emotion, and it'll identify it. So there's lots of different ways to muscle test, and that's how I kind of determine how to do it. A lot of people will use another person's arm, but I like to do a self-muscle testing where I use my fingers. When you use somebody's arm, they have to be keeping their mind really clear, and I just feel more confident in my own muscle testing when I test their energy. And it's all about intention. I'm intending to ask your energy questions, and that's how I'm getting the answers.
Okay.
And then we use the governing meridian with intention and just a magnet. It's just the magnet magnifies the intention of releasing it. And for those of us who aren't familiar necessarily with the acupuncture world, the governing meridian is the meridian that goes down the spine, and it's a riverway. It sends out all of the energy to the body. Think of it as a communication path. So when you use that governing meridian and you send the intention to pull something off of the body, it then sends the message out through the body and helps to release the energy.
Makes sense to me.
And pull it off. So do I have your permission?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just always supposed to ask that. So can I ask if Dr. Kevin has a heart wall? Does Dr. Kevin have a heart wall? Is it okay to pull some emotions off of Dr. Kevin's heart wall? Sometimes somebody might not be ready, and I might get a no to that, but your heart wall is okay. We can work on it. And when I do my muscle testing, I'll use my fingers and I'll say, show me yes, show me no. And I'm not actually changing the pressure. It's when I ask the question that the pressure just changes. So is the first emotion that we can pull off of the heart wall in column A, column B, odd, even, row 2, row 4. I happen to know most of the chart by heart. Is it depression, frustration, indecisiveness, panic, taken for granted? Do we need to identify more about the taken for granted? Is it adulthood, childhood, before the age of 15, before the age of 20, age 15, age 16, age 17, age 18? So it goes all the way back to age 18. At some point you felt taken for granted. That's probably one of the most common emotions. I think we all feel taken for granted.
At some point.
Do we need to know more about it? We can just release it. So we'll just release it. That was enough to know for that one. We'll release that emotion of taken for granted.
I even know what it's about.
There you go.
It's not important,
Yeah.
because sometimes what happens is because we're tired or we're sick or we're just feeling vulnerable, we'll trap something that we have no recollection of.
Yep.
But at that moment in time, there was a part of our body that was kind of just in a weakened state, and it trapped the energy. And it might be that you didn't fully process it.
Yeah.
And you might have been in a situation where you were told to stuff it down or to not deal with it.
I know exactly what it was. I mean, you said it. You said taken for granted. You hit 18. My brother was killed when I was 18, and my parents, who were divorced, they were both using me to try to negotiate with the other one around the death and the funeral, and I was the focal point of all of their grief and sadness and anger at each other. So Yeah, they took it, they took it, so that would make sense to
That
me.
makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So is there another emotion we can pull off? Is it in column A, column B? Odd, even, row 2. Failure, helplessness, hopelessness, lack of control. Does that go back to around age 18? I just felt like that was probably the place to start.
Okay.
Because if you think about that whole situation of where you were in that life, you would not have just one emotion.
Oh,
And I've lost a child and I've lost a husband, and there's a whole gambit of emotions that go through that time, and there's so many things that just get misunderstood. And people don't realize sometimes how you're feeling, and they just kind of project what they're feeling, and it's just a really hard time. So
yeah,
you probably,
especially if you're an empath.
and so you felt like you've had no control over the whole situation because of the whole dynamic
Yep.
of what was going on in your life.
Yep.
So is there anything else we need to know around that lack of control? Is there more than one that I can release at the same time? So we can release 3. So we're going to just release all 3 at the same time.
See, my brain immediately tries to go and associate what the 3 is. Because that's how I'm built, because I like to know.
So do we release the lack of control? Is there something else we can release? Odd, even again, row 2, row 4, row 6. Pride, shame, shock. Does that go back to age 18? Shock that he lost his brother. Shock around being treated the way he was. It's just the shock of losing him,
Okay.
which would make sense. So there are more than one on that one. Just one. So we'll release 1 on that one. We release the shock. Is there something else we can release? Column A, column B, odd. Row 1, row 3. Well, I'm going to go right to grief. Because I think this layer of your heart wall has to do with the loss of your brother. So is grief the emotion? Can I release more than one at the same time? 5, 6. You have like 8 trapped emotions around that grief at that time. So
Okay.
Dr. Nelson would say I'm not supposed to do it this way, but I feel like if I can identify it and release it as a chunk, I like to do it that way. So I added
my peanut butter chunky, that works.
I've added a few twists into the technique.
We all
So-
do.
So
Whatever,
we're just gonna release a whole bunch all at once.
If you're
So
doing
I'm
it
gonna
strictly
do
by
more like
someone else's
24
book,
swipes.
you're doing it wrong.
We release all of that grief. Is there another trapped emotion that we can pull off? Row 2, row 4, row 6. Pride, shame, shock, unworthy, worthless. Worthless, go back to age 18, before 18, before 10, 10 to 15, age 10, age 11, age 12, age 13. The feeling of worthless goes back to age 13.
Well, that would make sense to me.
Okay. Do we need to bring anything more forward? Just release it. We're going to release 3 trapped emotions around that.
Okay.
Release our trapped emotion of worthless. Can we release anything else at the moment? Column A, odd, even, row 4. Anger, bitterness, guilt, hatred, resentment. Okay, so I went through the list and I got that it was none of the emotions, which means you inherited an emotion. So is it an inherited emotion? So at conception, we think about genetics, but we can also pass on energy stuff. So we can pass on
And
emotions.
science is proving that to be true.
Yep.
So it's an inherited emotion. So is it inherited anger, inherited bitterness, inherited guilt? Inherited guilt from mom, inherited guilt from dad. The generational, it's dad's guilt. Do you have any other siblings besides your brother?
Uh, blood siblings.
Yeah.
I had 2. They're both dead.
Okay, that's okay, because the beauty of this work is when it's inherited, I release it up through the genealogy, which is
Okay.
why I'm asking.
But there were half brothers. So I'm my father's only child.
Your father's only child, okay. So we
I
can.
kind of knew where you were going, and I realized that I needed to,
Okay, so I'm going to intend to release this from you and from your dad so that it affects his spirit,
Okay.
okay? Because that's what the beauty of the work is that when something is inherited, it's nice to release it up the genealogy. Because remember, our spirit is more than just our life here. Our spirit is a compilation of all of our lives. And so we
Okay.
hold on to pieces from all of our different lives. And so if we can lighten the load of the spirit, we're going to pull it off. So sometimes I'll get an inherited emotion that goes back 25 generations, and I'll release it all the way up through those generations. So I'm going to do 10 swipes to release this from you and from your dad.
No,
Did-
why 10?
Inherited emotion is 10, a regular emotion is 3 swipes.
Okay.
How Dr. Nelson got that, I'm sure that all came from the divine, because Dr. Nelson credits the creation of emotion code and body code to a series of dreams in a response to why there were certain patients he would give chiropractic adjustments, and in his mind, he should be able to bring them in, give them a few adjustments, and them not have to come back. But when he would see that chronic patient coming in time and time again, he just felt like there was some other reason.
Right.
And so he took it in a prayerful way of asking, what's the reason and how can we correct this? Because he just wanted to heal people. And so,
Right.
so that was how,
Okay,
so
yeah.
it came from the divine.
Okay, excellent.
Is there something else we can release from Dr. Kevin today? Is that all we can release today? So I don't like to end it there because energy is energy. We've
Okay.
just released a whole bunch of negative energy.
Okay.
I want to put in some positive energy. And so I usually ask the person, would you like to put in an emotion or would you like to put in a color? And I ask you just to take whatever first thought pops into your mind because that's what your energy will want.
I got color.
Okay, what color?
I got purple.
Purple. And we're going to put in some purple color. And so I'm going to swipe up to give you the color purple.
Me and Oprah.
And so I put
Hopefully your
enough
experience
purple
of
in.
purple's better than hers.
Okay. So
Okay.
that's the start. But you know what I didn't ask?
What?
Are you curious as to what your heart wall is made of?
Sure.
So can we ask, is it a solid, hard material?
Looking.
Is it a food, soft? It's a solid, hard material. Is it wood? Is it steel? Aluminum? Cement.
Cement.
So your body made a heart wall out of cement. Because your body wanted to make sure your heart was really protected.
The house I grew up in as a kid, when things got really bad, I would go sit on the cement stairs.
Okay?
And there's actually a picture of me when I was on the cement stairs wearing a towel like it's a robe, and I had a crown on because the nickname that my stepfather gave me was King. I didn't realize until I was older that he was being mean and sarcastic, saying that I always felt like I was king. I thought he just really recognized the fact that I was king. And there's a picture of me sitting on the cement steps wearing my crown and my robe because I'm king.
Okay.
So cement would make sense to me
Right.
that this
That's
was.
a place something that's comforting.
So,
Yeah.
Safe.
so because it was comforting to you, your heart then put it around you. For some people, it's their favorite food. When I identify what it is, well, that was my favorite food growing up as a kid. So,
Yeah, I think my favorite food growing up as a kid was food.
so can I ask how far out Dr. Kevin's heart wall went before we started? Was it greater than 10 inches? Was it greater than 15? Was it greater than 20? 16? So your heart wall goes out 18 inches around. Think of a circumference around your body. It goes out 18 inches to protect your heart. Can I ask how much we broke down today? Did we break down more than 2 inches? So we pull down about 4 inches.
Well,
off
at
of
least
it.
14 inches. Keep going. Like, I mean, come on. You're not going to leave me with 14 inches.
The body,
That's not even measurable by a ruler that a second grader gets to do math with.
body can only process so much energy, and that's all your
Get
body
with
wants
the
to process.
program. What is your problem?
We can do some more another time. But that's what your body's willing to process. And you might notice later tonight that you're tired or you're fatigued or sometimes people don't notice anything. Sometimes people will notice different things. You might even feel a little discomfort or pressure and as the process of it releasing. Everybody feels something different.
Okay. Well,
So
tonight I'm going to go try kickboxing for the first time. I wonder if any of those emotions will get released.
you never know.
I'm going to
You
guess
could
with
always
2 energy healings today, you're going to be really enjoying your kickboxing class. Just don't get hurt, okay?
So now, does body code follow the same basic structure? Would there be?
same basic structure where you're identifying, but you're going into other energies and you're going into parts of the body. It's a more complicated process of identifying it. And sometimes what will happen is, for instance, you could have a physical trauma energy. It could be from something physical like a fall, or it could just be something from an emotion. But sometimes other energies were experienced that you need to identify. There might just be a whole list of trapped emotions that you need to pull off, or you might have had more of what's called a psychic trauma, which is at the same time you experience 4 or 5 emotions. And so you release all 4 or 5 of those emotions together. Sometimes it could be an energy of you had no more will to live. Life is tough, life is hard, you just want to be done. Not that you want to kill yourself, but you're just tired of it all. So there's all different types of energies within the body code program that you look at and identify. So it's a little bit more in depth. But lots of times, every time I do a body code session, I release a whole bunch of trapped emotions. It's kind of an integral part of it.
It's hard to separate one from the other, really. I mean, I would think, because you release an emotion, and if it was holding someplace in your physical body, there's likely to be a sensitivity there, a weakness there, an issue
Right.
there. You know, tomorrow, you know, when I might be a little sore or tired or fatigued, but I get on the scale and I'm 30 pounds lighter, I'll call you and thank you.
Okay.
If I'm not 30 pounds lighter, well, forget it then. If I just dumped all this emotional energy, it should be attached to some weight.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Just think how much easier that would be than dieting.
It would be easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to lose 27 more pounds. How many do you have to release? A quiz. And to get the answer, you can join us at the Web of Light Expo, April 21st, 22nd, at the Courtyard Marriott, where Carol Cleary will be there at the expo. She'll have space at the expo. She will also be speaking on body code, emotional code at the expo. Emotion code. We're gonna get the L out. We'll get the L out. Emotion code, body code. Come here, Carol. Speak at the expo, and you can stop by and say hello to her, and you know, find out maybe what your heart wall is. Lori, thank you for being my guest host for the month of March. Did you have a good time?
I did. Thank you, Dr. Kevin, for having me. I always like hanging out with you. I think you're pretty awesome, so.
Well, I think you're pretty
do
awesome
this
too.
again.
You gonna come back and play with me again?
Anytime.
Okay. Carol, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate that you shared this, and I know our audience will find it interesting. Underneath Carol, and at the end of the show, you've been seeing how to contact her. So that's all ready and good to go. In your life, you have experiences that happen. Emotions are just energy in motion. The energy might be the energy of depression, or the energy of anger, or the energy of love. It might be the energy of unrequited love. But that energy will go somewhere. If it doesn't go out of you, it hangs out somewhere in you. If it's hanging out in you, it's causing some problems. So it's time to suck it in, take a good honest look at yourself, and decide that maybe you don't really need those things anymore. And maybe you actually never really did. Namaste.